it's only a 2-player game for now. And the most problematic for me now is UI, particularly. So
Is
that's
it
why I'm
okay? So anything to do with like scale and constructing extrinsics and putting together a GUI tool for that? So just like hang in there. If it's nothing to do with that, then I'm curious to know.
Yeah, probably. Actually, like I have pretty much experience with backend, but with JavaScript and frontend. This is first my 2 months, I guess, in whole career. So
Okay.
at second month, I figured out what I need for set state in React.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, so our plan for today was that Kirill would walk us through sort of like a, demo and code walkthrough and maybe even some live coding or really whatever you feel like doing with the poker game. So maybe we'll start there. And I'm really happy that we're doing this today because this is sort of my vision for how Substrate collaborative learning will ultimately look, where anybody comes and shares their project or asks for help or shares something interesting that they've learned while building it. So thank you for volunteering to share today.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm also glad that I have something to present because I spent pretty much time for this.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so demonstration screen. Guess you see, right?
Looks good.
Okay, so I will start with with walking through code. But first of all, I will say sort of disclaimer. So first of things which come to mind when somebody thinks about poker is random numbers. And currently in my version, it's implemented with a bit of cheating. It's just a hash of block data and some other transaction data. And for this and for encryption, I really need to upgrade my prototype to Substrate 2.0 because Substrate 2.0 has support for off-chain workers. And off-chain workers is a mechanism which allows to use encryption, random numbers, etc., without affecting time of blocks generation. Because with my approach, which I used in prototype, encryption and random numbers have two drawbacks. It's performance, because we have to produce blocks in limited time. And second problem is non-determinism, because when we produce blocks, we must use deterministic functions, because the same function is executed on different nodes without their synchronization. So when off-chain workers, well, they probably already are in Substrate 2.0, but I haven't upgraded to it yet. So then it will be much better. Okay,
Yeah.
and
so this is based off of Substrate 1.0 at the moment.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and not the latest.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. So let's start from what I have in storage for my runtime model. Yeah, so probably somebody who haven't walked through Substrate documentation yet, brief introduction to architecture of your own modules. What is necessary to do is to go to GitHub Substrate package, clone it, and in my case, I renamed folders. So, for example, UI is Substrate UI, and Node is Node template. And basically, oh, that's so much. Okay, so runtime module is inside of runtime folder, and other is infrastructure for this. So I changed only this subfolder, and the entry point to all of this stuff is lib.rs, And basically, to implement your own module, somebody have to add his own modules into this root, and then implement some boilerplate, define storage, then also module, and optionally events.
Okay, cool. So you have actually, I didn't realize this before, but you have multiple.
Yeah, events. Yeah, and let's start with storage because it's like very core stuff. So, very brief introduction to poker terminology. Like we have blinds, is so-called blind bets, which we bet without seeing our cards. In a two players game, we have a separate role dealer. Well, basically for any game, but in a two players game, we have only these two like roles, player and dealer. And they differ that a bit different bets, a bit different order of moves. Also, what is pretty important for my engine is stage. Stage can be idle if we just joined the game but haven't started yet. Showdown if we proceed all game and finished with revealing our cards. And intermediate stages, pre-flop, flop, turn, and river. Yeah, that's strange names, but it's just how they are called. So pre-flop is when players receive two cards and they are hidden, not seen to other player. Then flop, we get three more cards, turn one more card, and one more card at the last is river. So these three stages provide shared cards. They are visible to everybody and accessible to combine combinations with use of them. Okay,
hey,
so
Kirill,
yeah,
you have, I had a question in my head and then a similar one came across the chat.
Yeah, sure.
It totally makes sense that you have to keep track of like where you are in the game, right? Because if you're, so my first question is like, if it says pre-flop, that means like I've got my cards, you've got your cards, we're maybe making some bets, but none of the community cards have come out into the table, right? Okay, so that makes sense. And then on line 50 there, it's the type that you used is U32, so like just an integer basically.
Yeah, good point. Actually, stage in my, wait a second, I need to remove this zoom bar somewhere. Yeah, stage. So basically it's like, obviously it's 1 byte is more than enough for this. But when we compile to WASM and with Substrate, we have to use U32. I guess that it's just because one register is not 1 byte, but one U32 in WASM virtual machine. And that's why we have to use U32. And if, like, why there is no translation automatically from U8 to U32, I guess because I don't know. Okay.
So that's why you use U32, even though obviously 1 byte would have been enough. The way in the chat, Sean wrote, "Is there a reason you didn't use an enum?" So an enum. Are you familiar with enum?
Yeah. So I mean, one thing I think the U8 issue that you're running into is something that has been patched in Substrate 2.0. So you might have tried to use the U8, and you would have seen that you ran into an error. And this is because we did an optimization for byte arrays where we took, we have like some, I don't know, definition of the U8 type that gets used in byte arrays so that the VEC U8 is really high performance. But then that made it so that we couldn't use U8 as a normal storage item. This is fixed in the parity codec when that is now in our 2.0. So in 2.0, you will be able to use a U8. So if you, instead of a U32 here, you could put like U16, or just like, I think just U16, one lower than it would work. But if you tried U8 specifically, it would have failed. My question was, I mean, it's just small implementation detail, but I think you can also use an enum here. So if you want,
actually, I thought about enum,
Yeah.
But when I started to do it, I just didn't knew much, so number was much simpler.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
usually I prefer algebraic data types, and yeah, it's much
Yeah.
better actually.
But anyway, to call out, I think in 2.0, you will be able to turn this into a U8, and it will work.
And enums are possible to use already, right?
Yeah, you have to define them just like you would like a structure. So you have to just define an enum type, and you have to define like the parity codec stuff.
Yeah, that's good, because actually now I have, for example, like in matching with these stages, yeah, obviously this will go away with enums.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I will update it.
Cool.
Okay, so stages. Well, pot, bets, stacks. Stack is like stack of chips, so it's in-game balance. Bets now is turn of the player who makes next move, and bet level is current level of bets which we should at least call to continue the game. And like the result of the game is round result, renamed to avoid clash of names, structure called win-loss info, and it contains information about winner, loser, and their combinations. And yeah, and the most tricky part actually this all related to actually dealing cards, and I do it in like first thing how we deal private cards of players, and this is relatively simple. We just generate round key on at client, and then we submit this key to the blockchain, and then we encrypt private cards. And when a player wants to reveal his card, he just submits his key. And for shared cards, that's not so easy because they're put into blockchain and we see everything what is in blockchain. And what I invented is 2 layers of encryption, and both players submit again their round keys for every stage. So here, like I have non-dealt yet cards, which will deal at flop stage, at turn stage, and at river stage. And this is field for encrypted cards. And this vector of bytes is encrypted with both of keys of both players. And when we deal cards, we decrypt them with both keys in reverse order and put them into share cards. Yeah, for encrypted cards, I used separate fields just for clarity at stage of prototype and simplicity. But when we deal already shared cards, there is no sense because like it's easier for UI, just map our field from blockchain with bond, with this notion from Substrate UI. And yeah, this vector just grows and it automatically redraws on client. For encryption, we have fields keys and secrets. Secrets is field for submitted secret parts of key pairs, and keys is public storage, which is initialized before we deal preflop. Okay, seems
Hey,
yeah.
let me ask a question. I think I get this, but let me just repeat it back to make sure
Yeah, sure.
correctly. So like if I'm a poker player here, I'm going to be generating a key pair that has a public half and a private half, but the private half is sort of like, it's just private for now, right? Like I'm not going to also use it in other things. It's just
it's temporal.
And I'll make it public like when I want to show my hand if we get to the showdown, or if I just like you know, want to show my cards at the end or something.
Yeah, and if you want, you can just discard this secret part and nobody will know your cards.
Okay, yeah, cool. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I have one more question. This part I'm not as sure about. Like I can imagine this working super easily if, like, you know, let's say, so it's 2-player game, right? So like, let's say maybe it's Kirill versus Bryant, and if there's someone, like, if I'm going to be here facilitating, you know, maybe I'll know the whole deck of cards, but then I'll only tell each people the appropriate information. But in a blockchain, there's no one playing like that role of me being the all-knowing person. So like,
yeah, correct.
where does the shuffling actually happen, and how does that part work?
Yeah, shuffling. Yeah, there is also one more field, but it's like revealed private cards. Okay, shuffling. Shuffling is like the most heavy stage of the game, and that is why I also need adopt off-chain workers, because really is this my prototype works now only in release version. This debug is just works too slow and it fails. So dealing of cards. Yeah, pre-flop.
So did you say that this works when you compile it with like cargo build release, but not?
Yeah. It works now only with cargo build release.
I got stuck for so long on that, and it was slow, like it didn't.
Yeah, sorry. But actually, it is written in README, but in very bottom.
It wasn't even it was a different project entirely, and I had the same issue. That's a good tip.
Probably it's common.
In general, Substrate block production is not guaranteed to work without release or something like that.
Yeah.
Probably it's also depends on time of which I set in chain spec of blocks production. And I tried it like when for example, let's go to this file just for probably somebody will find it useful who connected for first time. Yeah, so this is how we set blocks production time for every block. And we can change this time. For example, I set up from default 5 to 4. And if I set smaller numbers, then just some blocks can't produce, and this enters into infinite loop. So I guess the better performance of my functions, which I called in blocks production, the smaller number I can set, and the faster actually game will work. So right now, when we start the game, we wait, I think, yeah, like 5, I think not 10, but 5 seconds, yeah, for just pre-flop. And yeah, this can a bit annoy, I think, in a real world game. So how shuffling is made? So this is our imitation of random numbers, and we just call random seed, and we use also information about who calls origin, and dealer keys, player keys, just for like more informations, because the keys are generated on client, and it uses non-determinism inside because it's a real RSA key, and that's why I thought it's a good idea to put it also into randomization. So then we generate like almost infinite deck with amount of 1024 cards. And why I take more than 52? Because we need also filter duplicates, and I like this is a stream of random numbers, and I also remove duplicates on go, and then I decode cards from this byte. Like I have small functions for this. So I use 1 byte for each card and 4 bits for, no, sorry, 1 byte for suit and 1 byte for nominal. But when we are generating them from random, I use 1 byte for both because it's enough information, and I just split into halves. Yeah, so a bit of mess, but that's how I decode each byte into card, and I do it just because to zipping this stream of bytes into a stream of tuple of bytes of pairs was a bit clumsy, so I decided that it will be simpler.
Wait, can we pause real quick? So I
Yeah.
think I understand. So instead of actually shuffling a deck, what you do is you generate a bunch of random numbers, like 1,000 of them,
Yeah.
and you map them uniquely so that you make like whatever the first random number is the first card, and then as long as it's not repeating, you'll keep adding that to the list. And if you have a 2-player game, you only need 9 cards total, right? So
yeah, right.
really, you're just
exactly
hoping
9.
that in this 1,000 random numbers, you'll get 9 unique cards.
Yes. But this is calculated lazily.
Yeah.
So actually, yes, no overhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So there's some like, just to be sure I totally understand it, there's some like really small but non-zero chance that you'll get like 1,024 like
yeah.
You just deal through all of it. Yeah, I understand.
Ideally, it must be infinite.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then we encode our cards, and then we encrypt them. So player cards and dealer cards, like we handle them pretty simple, just encrypt with correspondent key. Pocket means this is private cards. And for other, we encrypt first with player key and then with dealer key. The same about turn cards, river cards. Yeah, I named it cards just for like, obviously it's one card, but yeah, I just called it in plural for similarity. But yeah, we use correspondent keys, and player key goes first. So when we decrypt, we must use dealer key first. And this, yeah, then we just put this encrypted stuff in correspondent fields: river cards, turn cards, flop cards, and pocket cards. Yeah, and when we decrypt this, for example, this is implemented in next stage function. Next stage, we submit secret from corresponding stage, and also declare which stage we need. And there is like, if none is if we haven't received a secret for other player yet, then we wait. And this is a small drawback of current implementation. Like there is such concept as mental poker. I discovered it recently when I was finishing this, and this is distributed poker without blockchain, and they use commutative encryption for encryption. So commutative means that in our situation we must wait for other key. If, for example, dealer key first used, so we wait first for a dealer, then for a player. And if dealer's key comes first, then we can already decrypt our bunch of cards. If player's key comes first, then we must wait for dealer's key. And if I was using commutative encryption, then I could apply key for decryption immediately after receiving, without waiting for other part, because order of keys applied doesn't matter with commutative encryption. So this is also direction for future development. Yeah, and if we received necessary key, then we just decrypt dealer key, player key, then validate. It's not really necessary, but it saved some of my energy, because something with UI is pretty buggy, and sometimes keys come in different order. That's pretty strange. I guess that it is related with storage of keys in browser, but haven't figured out how. So better to validate. And then we mutate shared cards. Mutate is convenient function for running changes without first retrieving state and then committing new state. This is sort of atomic change, so it works fast.
Well, no, I don't think there's actually any benefits between calling mutate versus calling
Really?
get set. So, yeah, I mean,
so it's more like for future, probably in future it will be.
I think there's this conversation just happened in Substrate Technical today or yesterday. There's a trait that you can implement, which there is a performance benefit, but your storage needs to be able to have a certain trait, which is like append a code encoded or something.
Yeah, okay, but it would be good if it was optimized. Yeah, I actually thought it is. All right. Yeah, and then we need betting order for new stage.
Yeah. I wanted to pause before you keep going to go back up to the initial shuffling, because my understanding, and maybe this is acknowledged from you at this point, but like it seems like all the steps in this process are deterministic, right?
Yes, I actually, yeah, because we can't use non-determinism without off-chain workers. I actually implemented RSA, which is deterministic. So it's obviously it's fake RSA.
You implemented that yourself?
Huh?
You implemented RSA?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I just assumed you found that on crates or something. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a very good exercise. I used this library, for example, but I had to rework it to use in Substrate, because this used big integer, and for example, we need to use U256 here. Yeah, and also I use only 64-bit keys. You can guess why. Yeah, because actually it should be possible to use U512, but I think with this version of Substrate 1.0, or probably it was too complicated for me, so I just used U256. Yeah, so it's actually not really difficult algorithm. So the core is modular exponentiation, and here pub key is modulus, and priv key is private exponent. So at client side, I extract these components from really keys, so you can't submit to my calls real RSA key, because it have some other information in it. So I call keys, oh, not here, here. I call keys only a certain component of keys. It's modulus and private exponent. Yeah, and how the storage for keys is structured. Basically, it's just struct with several vectors. I verify that it is initialized in some places. Just emptiness of vectors. Yeah, validation. And revealed secrets the same, but with options, because this structure like grows with proceeding through stages.
So it starts off with them all being none, but then
Yeah, all none.
as more cards come out.
Yeah, in idle stage it's all none. In preflop stage, pocket becomes something, and etc. Flop, turn river. Okay, so briefly I covered preflop and next stage, and I think there are also calls for call. Call is a name for making bet of current bet level. So bets become equal after this. And raise. And these functions implemented with usage that we have only 2 players. So I think with multiple player game, this would be a bit more complicated. Yeah, and I think we can go to determining of winner. This is called from next stage call when we I see that next stage is showdown. So in this case we reveal our pocket cards and determine winner. So for this, well, basically this part is normal Rust, no really substrate specific, but small like difference from really normal Rust is that we use Wasm, and Wasm makes some things a bit more difficult. So when we unwrap cards on the hands of our players, we go to ranking module, and well, basically this is all not really interesting, but what is interesting is that, for example, in Wasm we can't use for example hash set because it requires allocation, and there is for example create heapless, which is also possible to use, I guess, but like one of simple solutions is just sort and deduplicate, and this is necessary because we are using Wasm without heap allocator. Yeah, so
Kirill, tell me again.
Yeah.
That you were trying to you wanted. I understood the part about you can't use the hash set and everything. What's the? This is for like determining which of 2 poker hands is higher, I guess.
Yeah. So this is like basically I just do.
Oh, you have to
walk through all combinations.
The title there. So each player has 7 total cards, and you're picking out the best.
Yeah, exactly. So for this, in some places I use like unique elements of collection, and for this I need a hash set or something like this, and this is like sort of recipe how to manage to work without hash set.
Okay.
Yeah, it's used in several places.
Nice. I think there was also a data structure compatible with Substrate called like B-tree set or something like that.
Probably, I'm not sure. I haven't seen it. The only thing with really ready collections, I have seen heapless crate. It has index set. It's really pre-allocated fixed size, but some of memory not used.
Yeah, like it just makes sure it grabs enough memory up front, and then if you ever need more than that, you're kind of like out of luck, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so yeah, about events. Basically, I think I covered like the most important things in this project. Also, like small recipe, which I found for myself useful. Like since there is a lot of interaction between backend and frontend, then tracing errors can be a bit messy when you do something in a UI, then something failed, and you go to console, look with eyes for necessary error, etc. So I combined, like I used events for error messaging actually, and yeah. So this is depositing of events, and normal error is output to console. And also I use errors, events, sorry. For different notifications of user. So this is all like not really necessary information, but it makes experience of user much better. So like announcement when something serious starts, for example, showdown or start of the game, info message, error message, which is targeted. So only one user will see it, for example. New participant, new dealer, yeah, and different bet actions. So probably now, I don't know, how do you think? Is it useful to show how my UI is implemented?
That, maybe not how the UI is implemented, but definitely we should see a demo if that's possible.
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't think it's possible, then we can start just talking about the module. But if there's anything specific about UI implementation which you think is like you want to call out, of course you can touch on it. But I think UI development is a little bit, is it like extra to the module development?
Yeah, I also think so, and it's really should be reworked with better idiomatic React. Yeah, and okay, cargo, not scripts. This should be ready.
I was going to say, maybe just in the meantime, while it's building stuff like that, I can make some comments. Obviously, I think it's really cool, this implementation. I think that all the things you're doing here make a lot of sense. I think you mentioned that you saw the mental poker page a little bit later in your thing. So, you know, I think there are some specific things like shuffling, stuff like that, that I may refer to mental poker and be like, hey, these are some like, you know, more kind of written down ways of doing it. I think one general thing, and I think that as a person developing on Substrate, your approach makes sense as if you're running a normal program. Like you have the blockchain doing a lot of the computation and doing a lot of the kind of the processes. But I think it's important to realize that when you really want to optimize a Substrate module, I think the advantage of what a blockchain can offer, I think, is verification. So rather than, for example, having your module do the calculation, what is the optimal hand to win the game? What you want to do is maybe show both hands to both users, allow users to say, hey, I have the best hand, and here's the combination. And then just allow your blockchain just to verify that one thing. So rather than it running a loop and trying to do a bunch of checks.
Yeah, like for save some computation resources.
Exactly. Right? And I'm saying that this is more than just that one, but this is the mindset. The mindset you want with the blockchain is you don't want to do computation that a user can do and that you can verify.
Yeah, this
and
makes
then you
sense.
Can add on top of that a punishment or reward mechanism, right? So,
yeah, this totally makes sense because sometimes a player really can know that his hand is best. And yeah, or at least probably like we can compute it at client.
Exactly.
And commit at least estimation.
Yeah.
Or some universal ranking of this. Yeah, this is a very good point actually, because
I was also going to say, like, there's a distinction. So sometimes I make that same point. Like I'm always saying, you know, don't make every validator recompute this thing, right? You compute it once and the validator checks it. And sometimes people think that means like that a human brain has to compute it or something. But really the distinction is like, does it happen on the node where every validator does it? Or does it happen client side? Like it doesn't have to be me as a human saying, okay, these are my 5 best cards, but it could be like my local PC, whether that's my web browser or whatever, making that computation.
Yeah, and let me give a really common example. So I think a lot of people try to implement like an auction, right? And I think we've seen this with the kitties and stuff like that. And one way of trying to determine the winner of an auction is to like, you have all the people who bid, you do some kind of loop, you figure out who the best bidder is, that kind of stuff like that, right? What instead you can do is you can say, hey, for an auction, you can say, hey, I think I am the winner. And then if I'm the winner, it'll look up the storage item and how much money or how many votes you have or whatever, right? And someone else can say, no, I'm the winner instead, right? And so the punishment to a user is if they are not the winner, like everyone in the world can see who the winner is because the blockchain information is public, right? If they're not the winner, then them saying I'm the winner costs them a transaction fee, right? So users who aren't the winner don't do that. But maybe you know things on the blockchain are asynchronous. Maybe whatever. You can allow users to self-filter themselves and say, hey, there's only like 3 people who actually say they are winners, and then we can do a loop on those 3 people or something like that, right? So just ways that you can just have the blockchain act as a verification tool instead of it being a all-around computation tool would be really great. And an example of this, and actually I'm not actually sure if this is possible for this case, but this whole like signing and shuffling of the deck. Like ideally, the signing and shuffling of the deck happens completely off-chain, and somehow we just verify that things were done correctly on-chain. I'm not exactly sure how well that'll work, but something like that would ideally be possible if it could be done. But yeah.
Yeah, but also actually, if we want to, like, if player submit his rank of his hand, then we need to verify it.
Of course.
Like, if it's rank, then it is easy. But if a player just calls method and says that he is a winner, for example, then we need again. For example, he made mistake with selection of 5 cards from 7, and we need to verify this also. And this means that we probably need to walk through all combinations again. Probably not all, I don't know. But yeah, but this really, like mindset you said. Yeah, this is a good point.
Yeah, but either way, I think that, it's one of those things that I think I totally understand the way you did it. And in some ways, it kind of like, if you're learning Substrate, it kind of makes sense to do it that way because it allows you to basically program more, allows you to write more code, that thing. But I think if you're actually looking to make a production level module, these are the kinds of optimizations you want to look for. And especially
this would be good optimization, really.
Yeah, going also to this info message and error message, these are the kinds of things also I think that are really good for user experience, but in the end of the day may not actually be the right thing to do on the blockchain. So we know that if you're running a node locally, that you will see the error messages on your node, right? And you as a running local node could see what the message of those errors are. So if you're trying to make some kind of service, maybe you can funnel it up in some other way, but having it, for example, being stored in an event ultimately gets put in runtime storage, and that ultimately means that it like bloats, the chain state of your blockchain. So while it makes sense, if you're trying to just make it all blockchain side kind of application to have this information there, I think for a production level service, you would look to remove these items or find alternative ways. And one thing again to call out is that Substrate 2.0, or maybe something past Substrate 2.0, will have an updated error messaging system. So the way that we handle errors in the future will be different. So something like this may be more natively supported in a better way.
Yeah, this is cool. But actually, I recalled one point.
Yeah.
As I understand, events don't spend storage, right? So they really temporal.
Yeah, so I'll tell you exactly how it works. So there, in the system module, there is a storage item in the runtime, which is a storage runtime item, which has the events. So when you do events, it adds it to this storage runtime item. And then at the beginning of every block, that runtime item is cleared, right? So every block. So for a regular node, I think it doesn't eat up that much. It doesn't eat up storage, if at all. But for an archive node, it will eat up a lot of storage because an archive node will have these events saved for every block.
Wait a second. Archive node, you mean in opposite to light node?
Yeah, an archive node is a node which, rather than having just the current state of the blockchain, it has a snapshot of
all
every
chain.
So I can say any block, what happened on this block, what was the state at that block, right? And so these archive nodes are important for like, I don't know, some of the like more backend services. Like if you're running a block explorer or something like that, maybe you need an archive node, right? Or multiple of them.
I think if you're making a decision to run an archive node, you're of the mindset like I have a lot of storage and I know I'm going to be using it.
Right, but if you're a module creator and everyone has this mindset, then archive node people are going to get screwed pretty hard, right? Because I'm not exactly sure. Like I myself can't tell you exactly how to weigh these things, but as a blockchain developer, you just have to think about like, wait, is this something that I want to introduce or not? And are there better ways to do it? And I think something like this, where if you're trying to improve the user experience of someone using your module, that's in general, I think the wrong philosophy, because a blockchain should be used for verification, for consensus, and not for user experiences. I would try to think, if possible, how can I move these user experiences to the client side? Can I, for example, before a user submits a transaction, try to verify on the chain that, or off chain on the client, that this combination of cards is legal or illegal? Now, the blockchain obviously can verify it too, but the blockchain wouldn't necessarily say, oh, here's the problem. Your client would say, here's the problem, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Would say, oh, there is a problem. Again, I'm not criticizing this decision. It's just like when you, as a blockchain developer, for people who watch this video, this is the kind of decisions you need to be like, conscious of.
Yeah, actually, the most important for me was that it doesn't lie in a block, so it doesn't grow exponentially for archive node.
But it does actually go into a block. So I'll post a Reddit, a Stack Overflow post where I walk through how events get stored in the runtime. But yeah, it's cool though. It's all good.
Yeah, we actually
let's see.
Forgot about compilation.
Yeah.
Now we need to spend some time more.
This is also a good real world thing for people to see in the Substrate. It's also a good interesting thing for people to see when they're going to start on Substrate. The developing or the compiling time is a real.
Yeah. Developers should not forget about compilation. So probably, what would you like to see in this project while we're compiling?
Maybe we can just hear more about like going through it. Were there aspects of Substrate that were really straightforward, or what were the parts that you spent the most time on, or things that you overcame, or even like things like now it's easy to you, but as a new developer, it's hard, right?
This is a good question because I already don't know even.
Well, I think one thing you called out was like there was a lot of things you had to think about with WASM, right? And compiling with no STD and supporting the substrate types, right? So
yeah, probably I can show how easy for newcomers, how easy to bind codecs for custom types, because I was getting warnings like all 2 months I was working on my project, and only at the end I have seen your Stack Overflow answer.
Sure.
Yeah, and it appeared to be really easy.
Yeah.
So,
so I'm actually super happy you're showing this. So what is what problem is one trying to solve when they're writing?
Yeah, just to access custom structures from client. Like for normal structures, for example, vectors, it's not difficult at all. For example, all this is automatically wired to client, and the only problem was with custom structures. But actually, I haven't succeeded with suppressing warnings. For example, this, it's just suppressing, and probably even this also gives warning. But we will see when I'll start UI.
Yeah.
Okay, it's compiled.
Great.
First of all, for newcomers, that we
Persian chain.
must purge chain.
Yes.
That's not just for newcomers. I still make that mistake sometimes. For everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so UI. Yeah, these warnings. I actually didn't manage to suppress them, so there are 3 of them.
Okay, that's something I probably can help you with in a second later, but that's probably not important for now. Warning.
Yeah, it's really not important. Yeah, I just it started with this. Alice.
So Alice basically just like offered to host a game, and now someone else is going to come along and play against her or something?
Yeah, correct. So first player who creates a game becomes a dealer. And if somebody leaves the game, other participant becomes a dealer also. And I use the word participant to not confuse this player, because in current implementation, player is opposed to dealer.
Yes.
Yeah. So we don't have money. Okay. Alice saves Bob.
Alice is so nice to offer a proof of game and give Bob the money to play.
Yeah, I could, of course, do it in chain spec, but in 1 month I got used to it. But I should warn that not every time round can be finished in current implementation.
Yeah.
This looks pretty good for a guy who said
above
he's
and
new.
beyond on this UI.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly. It looks really nice.
Yeah. It's SVG, by the way.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so
at this point, 2 people have joined.
yeah,
The deck has been shuffled automatically.
mm-hmm.
Both sides have encryption keys that's been saved and stuff.
Yeah, this delay when we're seeing blinking button here, it was exactly providing keys. Because it takes too long, so I had to implement some placeholder.
But is this a handshake between the front end and the back end? Like the back end says I'm on this phase, and the front end says, oh, it sees it's in this phase, automatically submit a transaction.
It's not really. Semantically it's handshake. Like we have to provide keys, and blockchain waits until both players provide their keys to deal first stage. And there is like we generate these keys every round.
Got it. And this all happens, all the generation of the keys happen on the front end automatically, and a transaction is done to give the key to the blockchain. Yes.
And if we log out, then, or not log out, if we, for example, refresh page, then the keys will load again.
Cool, great. So let's see.
Where are the keys stored that you load them again?
In local storage.
Oh, cool.
I can show. Yeah, local storage.
Cool, that's a good idea.
Okay, it was not really useful, Ctrl B. Yeah, so, but somehow loading of keys works not perfectly currently.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Something about the order, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the magic of... Anyway.
Okay, let's do something.
Jack 5 raise. You're an aggressive player.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, now we're waiting for the next stage, and this time we providing secret for flop stage.
Mm-hmm.
Nervous every time when cards are dealt, actually. Because when last time I touched this prototype, it was not really every round.
Well, that's good. That's good. Okay.
Okay, let's, I don't know. Check is, by the way, is a call with 0 level. Like, if not, there are no bets currently, then we can check.
Yeah.
Oh. Waiting. Yeah, participants doesn't have something.
Jack high is the winner right here.
Yeah, seems so. Yeah, let's check with this and raise with Jack high.
It's a lot easier to know what to do when you know the other player's cards. I like that.
Yeah, pretty easy game. Oh, there is. No, it's not bug because yeah, we can't raise without all in. Yeah.
Got it.
Actually, I wanted to present it as Eastern egg, like when you do slide to top, then it becomes all in instead of raise. But it's also automatically for if there is no other choice for raise.
Okay.
Okay. Oh. Oh, 7.
Wow. Last minute win. I got it.
Game changer. All in.
So those messages that are coming up on the top right, Bob goes all in, Alice calls, whatever, that's what you were using those events for, right?
Yeah. I think gameplay is not that boring with them. Okay, it works. But if you want to see how it fails, then we can just one more.
This is good. I think this is plenty. I don't think we need to test your UI for end to end. One thing I would like to talk about now is, and I'm not sure if you implemented this yet. I would have to look at your code, but some of the edge cases. So, for example, let's say a game starts and then Alice stops participating.
Like quit, right?
Yeah, just like
left
just
the game.
stops. But just stops submitting transactions, right? So Bob has his money maybe locked in a pot, and Bob knows he's going to win, but Alice is going to upset or something like that because such puts her hand.
Yeah, in
playing,
this
right?
case, bets already present bets moved into pot, and pot moves to other. So basically, if one participant leaves the game during round in process, then it must perform fold before leaves, and the participant can leave without fault only if there are no game in process.
Yeah. Well, what I'm offering is, I think if you haven't added it already, what might make sense, again, this is just extra stuff, or ways people who are designing games like this would have to think about blockchain development, is adding things like timeout periods, right? So like if we've entered a stage and that stage hasn't progressed in 20 blocks, someone can claim hey, my participant is non-cooperative, and then there's a period of time, like there's like a rebuttal time where then the other player can say, oh, I am cooperative, I'm gonna finish the game.
Yeah, I thought about it actually,
like that, right?
but I thought to make a sort of timer with blocks count, but I'm not sure that for blockchain it like if. Of course, probably when I will improve performance and blocks will produce fast, then probably I will add this. But also, I'm not sure that like about concept of this, because blockchain is like something, I don't know, like beyond time. Like it's like static stuff. And probably it would make sense if there would possibility to play like chess with letters, for example. Like you think about your move and then you make it when you are ready. But I think at least second mode also would be necessary, because obviously in real time poker, then nobody wants to wait too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, I think what I'm trying to say though in general is that once you have a game like this set up and people have started to put funds into a pot and that those funds are removed from their account, there should always be some kind of fallback mechanism that a user can always recover those funds. And there's no situation that your module can like just keep a person's funds forever. So something like something like a user like saying, I claim that Alice has left the game, and then Alice not making a claim that defending her position. Then the module will say, okay, you made a claim and it's been enough time, and now you can recover your funds and the pot so that they aren't taken away. Again, what you, as just a recommendation for other people who are building modules and games, and very often there's this pot idea, you should always think about there should always be some fallback mechanism to gain access back to your funds. And usually that's involved with some kind of like, I say that, you know, this process is not good, there's time for anyone to counter that, and then that kind of thing, right?
So Sean, the
scenario would be good.
Let me see if I get the scenario you're worried about. Maybe like you and I are playing poker here. We get all the way through all 5 cards. It gets to showdown. I show my cards. You now realize that I have better cards than you did. So now your best strategy is like to never show your cards, just walk away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then, by default, the system would say, hey, Alice didn't show her cards in, 10 blocks. Therefore, Sean is the default winner.
Yeah.
So that.
Again, this all makes sense.
Again, the exact implementation details are important. But as a person who's building games, I would definitely recommend thinking about never having a way for these funds to get locked in a pot. These are the kinds of things where, of course, in Substrate, we offer these runtime upgrades and we offer these kind of things which could solve those problems. But when you're thinking about designing these systems, you want to make sure that there's no situation where, you get into a lock situation. Yeah. But,
yeah, I thought a bit about this. Like, if you want to gamble, then you are ready to lose your money.
yeah. In general, though, this is super, super cool.
So hey guys, I want to. It's a little after the top of the hour. So in case anyone's about to run out, I'm happy to go back to poker in a second. But in case anyone's about to step out, I just wanted to put out a call and see if anyone wants to volunteer to do a similar thing like this next week, where you show us your project. It definitely doesn't have to look as good as Kirill's did today. It doesn't have to be done. It could even just be something like, hey, I started this and I made it 10% of the way through and now I'm stuck and I wanted to solicit feedback, or like I wanted design feedback or anything. So does anybody want to offer up any projects to walk through next week, or in 2 weeks, I guess?
Maybe they can message you on Riot another time. I doubt that you'll get a response from me right away.
I'd love to see another one either way.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. That sounds great. Yeah, so feel free to hit me up however you know how. I'm Joshi at parody.io. I'm also at Joshi Orndorff on Riot, and I'm at Josh Orndorff on GitHub. And even if it only turns out to be like a day before the next call, or even if it's partway through the call and we finish the topic, always feel free to offer up your things. And so again, I'm happy to keep going here, but if you do have to run, thank you very much for coming and making this a vibrant community.
Yeah, thanks you for your attention.
Yeah, and especially thanks to Kirill for being the first community member to show a project, and quite a good one at that.
Yeah, I think, Kirill, your explanation of the topics were really great here.
Thanks.
Yeah, again, it would be really interesting to see with Substrate 2.0 and the off-chain workers things, how much we can really do it. So like, I think I'm thinking the exact same things as you. Like, I'm interested to learn about the cryptography stuff, the limits of that, and even like module development. I'm not exactly even sure how off-chain worker exactly is going to impact how you develop a module, but knowing that, you know, you have some transaction which can fire some off-chain worker. This off-chain worker, you don't know when it's going to finish, but when it's done, it will report some data back to the blockchain. So having this kind of mechanism you have where you have like an enum, and the enum talks about a stage, and the, you know, only certain functions we call the different stages, that kind of stuff. This is the kind of thing where I'm assuming that you might need to implement for a module which really takes advantage of this like off-chain worker process. So it would be really cool once we can start hacking more on 2.0 to get that in there. And you know, right now there's not even any documentation on off-chain workers really. So this would be something that's really great, maybe as a testing case to figure out how we can maybe make examples or tutorials for that process.
Yeah, I actually know not much about off-chain workers, apart that they should solve my problem.
These problems, yeah. Not sure how, but they will. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch on in terms of UI, the backend, maybe next steps, or someone who wants to continue this project or continue something like this project?
I think with backend part, we are more or less done. And the UI, I think, is too messy to show something about this, because
sure, no problem.
Like a lot of JavaScript code.
It's all there on GitHub.
And it's not really idiomatic. Yeah, it's on GitHub. Yeah. Everybody welcome to rewrite my UI.
Kirill, actually one last question. Do you have any next ideas? Like, I know you want to iterate on this project, but are there other things that have been tickling your mind to start?
First of all, upgrade to Substrate 2.0, then UI, then a 5 players mode, 5 or 9, yeah, more than 2. And yeah, probably different enhancement, but not really something. Commutative encryption also.
Sure.
Yeah. Commutative encryption sounds cool.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, I guess we can wrap it there. And then again, I'll just encourage everyone to, you know, contact me however you can with questions or things you'd like to share or requests for things you'd like someone to share that knows how to do it. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited about how it went today. And big thanks to you, Kirill.
Yeah, thanks to everybody else.
Cool. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Ciao.